I had been kind of getting into sales and realizing kind of what I needed to do. And I had this very interesting experience where a couple weeks apart, I went to a chiropractor and a dentist. And the chiropractor had I went to go visit the chiropractor because I hurt my back. And the chiropractor helped my back and then laid out for me a very specific set of things that they recommended I do, which included getting their services over a period of time, and said, and if you'd like to do that with us, your back will improve in these ways, and it costs this much, and you can make this payment today to get started. And it was very simple. It was very logical. I walked out of there and I was like, oh, I didn't even realize that I just got sold. Because I, as a customer, sometimes think of arm twisting and all the things we talked about. My come from as a customer was, I'm coming from arm twisting, when they were just serving me. And they started by fixing my back, and then they, laid out a regimen that was literally in their practice. What I came to find out later is that chiropractors, dentists, a lot of these service providers, they call it a case presentation. That's called your sales mountain, right? Your sales mountain is the case presentation. It presents the case, and the patient or the client can accept that. Contrast that with the dentist, where I got done and it was like, do you want to book an appointment in 6 months? Just contact us. It was like, I walked out of the office. There was no commitment to the next step. I care about my, having my teeth clean. I would like to just make sure that happens, but it was just, I walked out. Now, I've seen since then chiropractors who don't do a good case presentation and chiropractors who do. And I've seen dentists who do a really great case presentation and dentists who don't. But the reason I bring up that example is my chiropractor and my dentist were not salespeople. And so right now there's a bunch of entrepreneurs listening, and they're like, they don't identify as a salesperson. They identify as an entrepreneur or as a practitioner of whatever their craft is. And that's great. Just make a case presentation. It's called a sales mountain, and you've just laid out how to do that. So anything you wanted to say about that just maybe helping people to get past the psychology and understand the steps that you take to show value and lead people to action?
Yeah, if we remove the word sales and we just think about influence, persuasion, right?
Yep.
The doctor's going to influence us to do things to take better care of our health. The
right.
dentist with our teeth, the teacher to do the homework, whatever. And so we're all influencing. And so then the question is, do I want to get really good at that? Because if I want to get really good at that, then I got to learn this thing called Sales Mountain, or different trainers call it different things.
Right.
Take them through a process. This is true in dating. It's true in hiring. It's true in parenting. Parenting's a little bit different, but it's still influence. And so there's a science to this that anybody can learn. And there's a lot of different ways that it can be applied in order to make our lives better. And so to me, it's very worthwhile learning.
Yes. Yep. I love it. It is to me too. That's why we connected so well a long time ago. We'll talk about the next stage in just a second, but I remembered something that I wanted to share. When I started to really embrace the nobility of sales early on, I came across a quote from the great Zig Ziglar that you probably are familiar with. That says, "Timid salespeople have skinny children."
Yep.
And I loved it so much, because what's more noble than providing for your kids? And so I got it made up in vinyl, and we put it up on our walls in our office in the early days, so everybody understood that sales is creating jobs and feeding families. That's really a great thing. And yes, we want to get better and better at our craft and do it in a way that's service oriented and that improves people's lives. But I'm glad we spent the first few minutes here talking about that, because I think we got to get that mindset and psychology right in order to go to the next stages. And, and another great thing I remember realizing early on as we started to make sales and it was really starting to grow. I loved the Dave Ramsey quote of, customers show you give you certificates of appreciation with presidents' faces on them, and they appreciate what you're doing to improve their lives. So I love that as well. Okay, so now let's go to the next stage. We talk about the 1s and 3s of revenue. Getting to 100,000, you got to get the psychology part right. And you got to apply time to it. A lot of times entrepreneurs are so distracted doing lots of different things, or they're doing the day job and they don't have enough time to sell. And so if you got enough time and you apply to psychology, you can get to 100,000. Now, what needs to happen to get to 300,000? Because pretty soon you start to realize that you can't do it all yourself. And I know that you've got a view of what needs to happen in order for that business owner that's now starting to learn how to sell to be able to take sales up to 300,000 a year.
Yeah, I'll tell you, I teach exactly what I did myself when I started my sales training company, and I started out of a spare bedroom in my condo. And so I'm everything, I'm for service. I'm running the credit cards. I'm the web developer.
The life of the solopreneur. Yes.
And it's like, all right, now I got some revenue coming in. What if I hire an assistant to offload, the customer service and data entry? And I think it was like $1,000 a month. And it was scary, Clay, to make that decision, right?
Yeah.
Made the decision. Okay, now I've got that doing 20 hours a week. Now I'm freed up to sell more. And then I was like, right, how can I accelerate this more? I need some sales support. I need somebody to book appointments for me. I need somebody to do some follow-up work. I'm still the salesperson.
Yep.
That's what I did as a next step. I hired some admin support and I hired some sales support. And then that took me to my next level.
I love that. It's funny because in the stages of software growth where I've kind of applied the general small business growth stages specifically to software, I call out the key thing that needs to happen in operations in the business is freeing up the owner to be able to sell more. And that's what you've just described. You get it, $1,000, which is scary, but you're you're buying back some of your time by hiring that person. Just make sure you use that time to sell more. A lot of times people will go, they're good at selling. They buy back some of their time because they don't like doing this certain thing, but they don't increase the amount of time they're selling. And you want to get better and better at selling. So getting to 300,000 in a nutshell, it's some admin support, improving your sales capabilities, and the amount of time and effort that you're putting into sales so you can scale it up to 300,000. Okay, great. So now we're at 300,000. We want to grow the business to $1 million. Now it starts to get, this next stage to go from 300,000 to $1 million. You're not going to do that just the business owner. So I think one of the scariest investments that we ever make, probably the scariest investment, is our first employee. But the next scariest investment we make in business is hiring a salesperson, because it can go so wrong. It's really hard to get it right. So I know that you and I have talked, and you believe that hiring a salesperson, you're not going to get to $1 million unless you figure out how to hire a salesperson. So let's take a little time here, because we got a lot of people that are listening that are in that 300,000 to $1 million. They want to get to that 7-figure business, and they know that they need a salesperson, not to stop selling themselves, but to augment what they do, to put a little bit more of their time in some other areas of the business. It starts to become very, very necessary. So take us through that. How do you hire a salesperson effectively?
Yeah, well, it's a whole different skill set. You're out there now, you're selling, you're doing great. Now you got to hire the salesperson. And so you're thinking about it through the lens of this person. What's a salesperson looking for in an opportunity? They're looking for a good comp plan. They're looking for stability. They're looking for, good leads, a good product to sell. They're looking for culture, right? Yep. So now we got to develop a whole new muscle, right?
Yes.
So that's, you and I both know this, because I've been in business I'm in my 27th year. And so you learn a lot, as you're hiring one salesperson, hiring a sales team, and then you got a sales manager. And so there's a lot to learn there, but it's really thinking about the opportunity through the lens of your salesperson that you're going to be hiring.
I love that. Yes.
Because it's
why would they come do this, right? What if you want to attract the right person? Why would they come do it?
Yeah, like what's your training that you're going to provide them? What CRM are you going to provide them? Because you're not, what you're thinking of is probably, oh, if I have a salesperson, there's more revenue coming in and I get to grow. That's true. But what about that person?
Yes.
If you're like, oh, it'd be great, I'll just hire them on straight commission, and that reduces my risk. Well, here's the problem with that. It's not that you can't do that, but You hire somebody on straight commission on day one, Clay, they're already looking for another job because what if it doesn't work out?
Right.
I don't want my new hire literally on day one already in the mindset of I'm looking for something else. And so I will often provide guaranteed compensation, whether it's a draw or whether it's a 90-day certain amount I give them, retainer amount, hourly, whatever, because I don't want them in that mindset. So
Yeah.
we have to really think about, like, how am I going to support this human being?
Yeah.
And we're probably not used to encouraging another person. Like, when they don't perform, how do you communicate with them? Are you like frustrated? You communicate your frustration, or are you supportive and nurturing? And do you have reasonable expectations? And have you documented what's their job description? What are you expecting? How are you going to communicate with them? Because now you've got this person that's going to be reporting to you, and they're going to need support. So these are all things that, you're not, unless you've had salespeople before, you're not going to know that.
Well, and on top of all of that, you have learned how to sell, but you haven't learned how to teach other people to sell. And so it's all up in your head frequently. You haven't usually taken the time to get it out onto paper and say, okay, here's what happened. A lead comes in. We do A, B, and C, and then it moves to the next stage in the process, and we do D, E, and F, and then it moves to the next stage. And we do, we don't tend to think that way. We just get leads and respond and react, and we're closing deals, right? That's what we do when we're founders that are selling. And so first you got to find a person who's got the right skill set. And by the way, that right person is not someone who's been in a really large organization as a salesperson. It's someone who's been in a relatively small organization similar to yours. One of the great things about laying out the stages of business is that you want to hire people who have proven recently that they're really good in the stage you're in and the next stage you're following. So if you're at 300,000 to $1 million, you want to hire salespeople who have been really good at 300,000 to $1 million and 1 to 3 million. You don't want to go hire someone that's got sparkling credentials from a Fortune 500 company. They're not going to work well in your business, and you're not going to be a good leader for them. So hire for the current stage and one stage ahead, someone who's got a proven track record of selling effectively, something similar to what you sell, and at the same